Awesome, hello. Most of you are still here, so that's awesome. I'm going to talk about Barrel files and whether to use them or not. I'm Adrian, I write code at Visma. You can find me on Medium and Twitter, I'm at Adi Faciu. If you're interested, check it out. I post things related mostly to Angular and TypeScript because that's what I use daily. And he said we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, so just hold on to your questions, but if I say something utterly terrible, please stop me. So, barrel files, let's see what the heck they are. Quick question, how many of you know what they are or work with barrel files? Okay. Probably more of you know what they are and use them, you just don't know they're called barrel files. That's it, that's the whole trick here. You know them. So we now have modules. Basically, we have some files when we write our code in which you can write functions and classes and whatever we want, and they are scoped to that file. So nothing gets out of global scope. We just have functionality in one of our files. And we can export whatever we want from there. In this case, I export a class or a constant or a default export, which is an object, and so on. And like I said, this is just a simple file with a name from our project. And since we have all these exports from different files, we also have ways to import them, like the import statement, where we import the default, we import everything with an alias, or we import a specific thing like we do with foo here. And we have to specify the path towards our module. In this case, we assume it's in the same folder. By the way, whenever you see something with blue, it's a link. I'll send you the link, the slides afterwards, and just click on it and see more information about what I'm talking about. So barrel files are a way to re-export all or some of these things from one single convenient place. See, everyone knows what they are, you just know they're called barrel files. Are those index files you all have in your projects. And they are called barrel files. I have no idea why. If you just ask me. Someone called them barrel files. So all these things, you can re-export them from one single convenient place. How do they look? Let's assume we have a folder with some services in it, like we have the app service and the logger service and the user service, and we want to create this kind of barrel file. What we have to do, simply create our index file, and inside it, we re-export things from our other modules. In the first three examples, we re-export something specific from an export app service, from app service, or logger service, from logger service. And in the last example, maybe we export several things from a module and we don't want to write all of them there. We just export everything from a certain file. Another thing which we can do in these barrel files is to group things together. For example, we have services. We create an array here, like app services, and we put all those services in the array and export that array also. In certain frameworks, like Angular, that helps because there are cases where you have to place all your services, and you just put that array instead of like putting a whole list with everything again. That's another case from that. So if we wouldn't have barrel files, this is how we would imports look. Like we import every service from its specific file, and we have to write the path to that file. But if we have barrel files, we can simply put them all in one place and import them from one single module, our barrel file. And since most module loaders look for a file called index in a folder, if you specify only a folder as path, we can omit index and just import it like that. That's why they are called index by convention, because you won't have to write it anymore. All the module loaders, most module loaders, will look by it by default. So those were barrel files. Now a small detour. I'm going to get back to them in a second. About these imports, how do you handle them and how we make them better? This is a simple trick. I love it, and it will help you quite a bit when you're writing applications. We have path, alias, and base URL. So basically, if you're working with Webpack, you can create an alias, and you say that whenever I write core, I want it to go to source app core. And this is in resolve alias. The title is a link to the documentation on how to do this. In TypeScript, you have two options, base URL and paths. Base URL, you specify a folder or a path from your project that will be used as the base whenever you import something. And then you'll be able to write absolute paths related to that base, or you can create a path that, again, we define core to go to source app core. Basically, it's the same thing as we have here. And then let's assume that we're somewhere in our app and we want to get the user service, and we're I don't know how many levels down, and I have to write that. A relative path, like go up one folder and go up one more folder and so on until we get to core and services. If we have aliases, paths, or base URL set, basically with base URL, we can do this. We have to import user service from app core services. And that's it. No more relative path, it's an absolute path. And you can easily read it. Or if we have aliases or paths, simply go to core services. Now, why do I like them? First of all, because they are way nicer to write and to read than that. And one major benefit is that you'll be able to refactor and move files around without breaking the imports. So if it's a relative path, you're going to move the file and then you're going to have to fix it because it's no longer that. It's no longer there. If you have them like this, they simply work. And whenever you're starting a new project or you're adding new features or things like that, you're going to change the structure quite a bit. And this helps a lot. We didn't use this in the beginning. It was a pain in the ass just to move files around. I was reluctant to move files to a better place because I had to fix like 1,000 imports. And that kind of sucks. But using it like this, it's way nicer. I have no clue if it's possible with things like system.js. We can talk afterwards. I haven't used it like in 2 years. But probably it is somehow. I just didn't have the time to look it up. And also, besides refactoring, this is helpful. I know neither of you do that, but when you copy-paste code, have something in one file, you want to copy-paste it somewhere else, if you have the import like that, it will still work. Okay, now back to barrel files. What works and what doesn't work? Well, after I've learned what barrel files are, not the term, but index and how to use it, I was like, yeah, it's awesome. They're great. I'm going to put one in each folder because that's how you do it. And just create an index file in each folder and re-export everything from that folder, and one level up, re-export everything from all the folders and the other index and so on. So it took me some time and I started doing that. And after a while, I figured out that, heck no, I could no longer understand anything. I ended up with a lot of circular dependencies. I'll show you in a second what I mean by that if you haven't figured out. And I needed a lot of time just to create and maintain of those files. It was nuts. Like, I started with, whoa, they are awesome, and I ended up here hating them. Like, fuck them, I've never used them. I just write all the imports with relative paths and from all the modules, and that was it. So circular dependencies, usually from module A, you require module B, and from module B, you require module A. That's a circular dependency, but it doesn't happen like that most of the time. They are indirect. Like from user service, I require logger service, and from logger service, I require app service, and app service requires user service. And your module loader will kind of crash when it encounters this. Now the tooling, at least Angular CLI and Webpack, what I use more frequently, are way better than they were like 1 year, 2 years ago. 1 year ago, you would get something undefined in one file, have no idea why, and it was because of a circular dependency. It took you a lot of time to find what's undefined, why it's undefined, and then to try to fix it. And if you have like 1,000 barrel files, well, good luck with that. It's going to be like 3 days of debugging and pain. So this is something which you really want to avoid, like no circular dependency. Now usually it tells you, oh, you have a circular dependency in this file towards this file. It's considerably easier to figure it out. Normally excluding barrel files, if you're working on an application and you have a circular dependency, something might be wrong with your design, with your application design. So that should not happen normally. If you have a circular dependency, try to figure out what you did wrong there. How to use them? One level of barrel files per application. This is based on my experience, and I'll try to give one example what I mean by this. One way to structure your application, a good way from my point of view, is to create folders based on features. So in this case, I have companies and documents and document details because these are features or modules in my application. And in each folder, we group all our files based on type. So I have a folder with components, a folder with services, a folder with models, and so on. By the way, this is a real screenshot from the application that I'm currently working with Claudio here. So it's not something I made up for this presentation. I took the screenshot last week. So what I mean by one level only is to create a barrel file in each of those type folders. So I'll have a barrel file in components, a barrel file in services, a barrel file in models, and so on, and that's it. No barrel file above that level and no barrel file below that level. In some weird cases, we've discussed creating some 2 levels, but we gave it up. And once you have them there, you'll have imports like import document model from app documents models. And irrelevant where you are in your application, you'll figure out what you're importing and from where. And most importantly, you will have no circular dependencies from barrel files. A big no-no is like, don't re-export in a barrel file something from another barrel file. That's like, you'll end up with circular dependency for sure. If you do that, it's like all downhill from there. This structure works, like I said, it's based on our experience, and it's the best what we end up with up to now. And this is how you use them. And everything should be clear and easy to find. When you write an import, let's say that we don't use your IDE or editor to do that, because in my experience, both WebStorm or Code kind of suck at that. Like the latest update of Code, now every import it goes like relative path to Node modules to fetch something that I need. You don't want that. So usually I write them manually. When I write it, if it's like this, I know it. I want a document model from that feature and models folder. And when you look at an import, you should know what you're importing there in like 3 seconds, 5 seconds. If you look at an import more than 5 seconds, you have no idea what you're importing and from where, it's kind of not that good. If it's not clear when you write it and when you read it, probably the barrel files or the structure of your application is wrong and you should change it. I was supposed to be here, sorry. So, never be afraid to change your application. We change our structure like 5-6 times in the application that we're currently working. And we keep the one that we have now simply because it works. Whenever we want to write something, we know where to get it from and we know why it's there. So that was about barrel files. If you want the written form, I have a Medium post about it. Like Jonuts noticed, if you just Google barrel files and no one's have a clue what barrel files are, you just find my post, like is the first or second or in the first five or something like that. That was about it. Questions? I think I was exactly in 10 minutes. Yes?
Me or someone else got first?
No, I think it was just
Is there a way to generate?
It's a way to generate type.
Yeah. You have the files, the structures, and you just want to say, okay, everything in this folder exported into this file.
I assume you could create a script that would do that.
Yeah, there's one already built.
There is an extension for VS Code that does that.
I use Emacs.
Personally, I don't kind of care about any tool that generates code for me because I'll have to maintain that code afterwards anyhow. And yeah, I think I can usually, I should be able to write code better than a tool. And usually in those barrel files, I maybe don't want to export everything, or like I said, I will group them together, or I'll do some kind of things with them which is hard by a tool to do, but it's a valid point. If you have simple things, you could create one and just go in that folder and generate a barrel file out of everything you have.
My question isn't mainly related to apps, but to libraries. So if you create a library, maybe it would be a good idea to group this, to group in features. So you can import this part of the library, this part, instead of
Yes.
That's why I'm asking.
From my experience on creating libraries, in a library I have only one barrel file, and I never want to export from it everything, because I have a lot of things that I export from modules that I want to use internally in the library, but I don't want to export them so the consumer can get them. And if I would use a tool, it will just export everything, but maybe a scenario is just use the tool, generate the barrel file, and then delete what I don't need, instead of adding them there. So you basically, like, most of you know what barrel files are, you just didn't know they're called, and you use them daily. Yes?
How does the IDE know where to find the import? Because you define that in the webpack config, right?
Yes.
So if you click on the imported symbol, will
Yes.
it take you to that symbol?
Yes, that works. It fails when it uses auto import. Sometimes it works, but most of the times, like I use VS Code, I have auto import disabled. Like it messes up so often that I simply don't use it.
Okay.
But it works. Again, with VS Code in the latest versions, it goes to the definition of whatever you're looking for, but if it's a larger project, now it takes a bit of time. It used to be fast. Now you just look at that progress bar for like 3 seconds. Oh, now I haven't found. And sometimes I just hit go to definition and like, nope, cannot find any definition. I open the file manually. I go back and hit go to definition. Oh, here it is. Now I know what it is.
Because it doesn't know where the import is, right? Because it's defined outside. So it should interpret
I'm not
the-
sure about Webpack and VS Code. I haven't tried that recently. But with TypeScript, VS Code will load the tsconfig file when it loads the project, and it tells it loads base URL and loads all the paths, so it knows what to do. And if you have already an import from all of those paths, then auto import will work. It doesn't work the first time when you have to figure out where to get it from. Yep.
I have a question not related to verified, but just a curiosity. You have used the plus before the
Yeah.
what's the reason?
Yes, it's a convention when you develop Angular applications. It means that that module is lazy loaded.
Ah.
So you create a bundle with it, and you know, you don't load it right away. Only when the user goes to that page or something, we get the JavaScript and we parse it. We didn't use it in the beginning, and then I started seeing it in all kind of examples. And it's like, okay, whatever I'm using, usually I'm trying to follow the conventions because you get new developers and new people looking at your project, and then well, it's easier for them to understand. For example, at this project I work with Claudio, other teams from my company started looking at our code to see how we did things because we were one of the first teams working with Angular. And instead of them asking each day, what's this, what that means, I follow some conventions so it's easier for them to understand. Other questions? Thank you.